One Focus Radio.
Welcome to the show, it's Dyer's Daily. Keeping in the know, it's Dyer's Daily. We've got chat, we've got discussion, nice and slow, ain't no rushing, reading emails and events. Sometimes he makes no sense. It's time to start the show, it's Dyer's Daily. He'll be there in a mo, it's Dyer's Daily. We've got plays, we've got interviews, even stuff that's in the news. Local and otherwise, come and try it on for size, it's Dyer's Daily.
Welcome to this edition of Dyer's Daily for the 16th of November 2018. My name is Jamie Dyer, and in this episode we shall be taking a look at the new release from the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra and just asking why. But before we get to that, let's have a word from some other great podcasts out there. Not saying I'm great, just trying to get on to the next bit. Right, see you in just a moment.
There were columns of soldiers trying to get onto the small boats.
A shell holiday, that's a more frightening experience I've had.
25 yards, ramp going down, now.
We did anything to get a couple of days sick. We used to put the finger on the line and let one of the lads hit it with a hammer.
We hurled ourselves upon one another with a fury that afterwards we could not understand.
Yeah, we crash landed in the field.
Imagine the shock when the pick clangs against steel. You wonder if you've started the clock ticking. Fighting Through podcast. Great unpublished history.
Was A Quiet Place inspired by Signs, It Comes at Night, and War for the Planet of the Apes? Was Ready Player One influenced by Avatar, Wreck-It Ralph, and The Last Starfighter? Is The Hurricane Heist more influenced by Sharknado or Geostorm? These are the kinds of questions my guest co-hosts and I discuss on my podcast, Piecing It Together. Every week we look at a new movie and try to figure out what other movies inspired it. Whether it's the story, the character development, tone, or even use of music. Every movie was influenced by something that came before, and we want to figure out what. Check out Piecing It Together on your favorite podcast app or check us out on piecingpod.com. You can also follow us on social media at piecingpod. Piecing It Together is a part of the All Points West podcast network.
Dyer's Daily.
Right, we're into Friday. We can chill a little bit because we're all tired, we're all worn out, and we're kind of waiting for the weekend to start, and we can start kind of pumping ourselves up for the weekend. But before that, take a pew and listen to me for just a few minutes because today, quite interestingly, the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra released a new album. Now, if anybody knows out there, they will know that they have released several albums with mostly deceased stars. So they've taken some recordings from the stars. They've done people like Elvis. I think it started with Elvis, went on to people like Roy Orbison. Obviously before she died they did Aretha Franklin as well, using mostly archive material, if not all. And now they have done Buddy Holly, and it just seems to be a never-ending thing. There just seems to be so many of these albums out there now, which is kind of, I don't know whether to call it brilliant or just eerie. I don't know what it is, but there's just so many of them. And really, what are they achieving? Most of the time it's the original recording with a little bit of orchestra in the background. Well, that is what I thought actually when I heard some of the others. It doesn't really change that much. It doesn't really improve it. I mean, the Beach Boys, they did one with the Beach Boys, and to be honest, those records were so full to begin with that it didn't need anything extra. It didn't need any kind of extra orchestra or anything like that, because the whole thing was orchestra anyway. The Beach Boys as a harmony group are the orchestra, so you don't really need anything else. So I found them problematic. That is until this new one with Buddy Holly, of course, with the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra, called True Love Ways, which is out today, the 16th of November 2018. And my only complaint about it after listening to it once is that it's too short. It is literally 29 minutes. Now, I can understand why. I can understand why, because the songs come from an era where most songs were at the most about 2.5 minutes. But it's just too short. It's too short. I mean, whereas the other ones, it felt like, as I said, there was almost too much there. It was already full. There was something about the Buddy Holly recordings that were very kind of empty. And that's kind of the empty shell of rock and roll. It kind of was stripped back to begin with because of the technology that they had at the time. And he was always very experimental with different sounds and stuff. He wasn't really concerned with filling the speaker, just kind of playing with it a little bit. And he started experimenting with orchestras a little bit later on, which is probably what spurred this release in the first place. The fact that some of his last sessions before the tragic crash of 59 were mainly using orchestras. So this is kind of built up on that, and they've added some of the rock and roll standards on there, one to sell it, and two because, well, to sell it really, because they're absolute classics and every song on it is a good one. My only complaint is that the songs are too short. In this day and age, when a song is under 3 minutes long, it's too short. And I say that as an artist who has released songs that are 2 minutes. You know, as a listener, it almost ends too soon. You kind of... I have been a little bit of a complainer when it comes to some of these albums, because they have these long intros to kind of justify the orchestra being there. But with this, you want that. You want the orchestra to be there. You kind of want them to show their worth, because actually the way that they've built it all up around Buddy Holly's vocals and guitar is incredibly tasteful, and I love it. I think it's brilliant. I think it's one of the best, if not the best, that they've done, because those records were just so stripped back to begin with. So it's actually adding something new rather than building on top of something that was already full. I don't know. What do you make of this, dear listener? I mean, I don't know. I'm always a bit funny about when they take... I love the idea. I've always loved the idea of taking an artist who is not popular anymore, or who isn't kind of mainstream, or perhaps someone who isn't here anymore, and taking one of their records and bringing them to public attention. And I think that's kind of the intention with the release of these albums. It must be, along with the hardened fans and, you know, buying the record to begin with just because it's kind of a completist thing. But I've also find it a little bit funny because, like some of those Michael Jackson albums that have come out, they don't have any input into it. It's just their archive recordings. It's kind of strange, you know. It's a strange kind of weird decision, because if I made a recording and after I was gone they decided to remix it and stuff, I would personally like that, but I can see that other people might not be kind of keen, you know. So it's very hard, but it's so long ago, and it actually surprises me that they've chosen somebody that did it so long ago, that is so far in the past. I mean, obviously with Buddy Holly, he was a rock and roller who ventured slightly into orchestra, so it kind of does it. But what happens when they run out of people to do? You know, like the real mainstream people, the people that they know they can say, well, we're going to sell at least X amount of copies of this. What happens when they run out? I don't know. I personally don't know. I mean, they've done Buddy Holly. They've done several of Elvis. I mean, they're probably going to do another 500 Elvis albums. But you see, Elvis is a bit of a special case because he's been having re-recordings and all sorts of different remixes and stuff over the years. That was kind of to be expected. But then when the Roy Orbison one came about, and Aretha Franklin and the Beach Boys, and it's just one thing after another every 5 minutes. I'm sure I saw the other day an advert for Cilla Black. Now, it's just kind of relentless. If they go at this speed, they're going to run out of vintage artists to do. I mean, I know the only one they won't touch is the Beatles, because that's kind of a sacred ground, you know, and also Paul and Ringo are still here to kind of go, well, no, actually, we're going to wave the stick here and talk about it, which people might not want to do. But I just find the whole thing really fascinating. And I have to say, for anyone who's going, you're slagging off the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra, I'm not. And personally, I think this new album, True Love Ways, with the estate of Buddy Holly, I should say, is absolutely marvellous. 12 songs isn't enough. 29 minutes is not enough, because your orchestra actually complements the original recordings. And certainly if there were more of those kinds of releases with artists where it was stripped back to begin with and it's kind of adding an extra layer, please do that, do it. But I just don't know what to think of it. What do you think? Let us know via the Facebook page and via Twitter and stuff as well. Wow, see, I knew I was going to have some kind of rant. Why is it Friday is turning into rant day? Every week I've got something in my head and I think I'm going to talk about it, I'm going to get it out there and see what happens. And this is that day, isn't it? Right, so we're at the end of the week. Let's just put this music on. Come on, here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4... Bam. Right, thank you very much for listening to Dyer's Daily. My name is Jamie Dyer, and it always will be, and we shall see you on the next podcast, which will be on Monday. But until then, rate, comment, subscribe. Have a great weekend, one and all. Okay, bye-bye for now. This has been a South Waves audio production.